In a major shift driven by the European Union's Digital Markets Act, Apple is making significant changes to its App Store, opening up doors that were previously locked shut. This move addresses growing concerns about the iPhone maker's tight control over its mobile ecosystem, the App Store, and its impact on competition and consumer choice. The centerpiece of the change is the arrival of third-party app stores. For the first time in the European Union, developers will be able to distribute their apps through alternative storefronts downloaded from websites outside of Apple's walled garden. This marks a dramatic departure from the App Store's long-standing monopoly, paving the way for potentially more diverse and competitive app landscapes. But the shakeup doesn't stop there. Developers will also gain the freedom to offer alternative payment methods within the App Store, bypassing Apple's in-app purchase system and its hefty 30% commission. This gives developers more control over their revenue streams and potentially reduces costs for consumers. Beyond app distribution and payments, Apple's changes extend to user choice. European iPhone users will now be able to set default browsers and contactless payment providers, breaking Apple's dominance in these areas. This empowers users to personalize their device experience and choose the applications and services that they prefer. However, not everyone is singing Apple's praises. Critics point to the introduction of a new core technology fee of 50 cents per install for apps exceeding 1 million downloads annually. This fee, while seemingly small, raises concerns about its impact on smaller developers and the potential for stifling competition in favor of established players with larger user bases. Spotify, a vocal critic of Apple's App Store practices, has slammed the fee as extortion, arguing that it disadvantages free apps and those seeking to grow their user base. They point out the potentially crippling costs for a viral app attracting millions of downloads, raising questions about whether the new system truly fosters a fairer, more open marketplace. Daniel Ek, the father, CEO, and founder of Spotify, had so much to say he took to X, formerly Twitter, to announce his frustration, arguing that Apple are perhaps above the law. He said, "Sadly, this is a classic move of an old, dominant company that believes the rules don't apply to them. Instead of adapting and innovating, they're twisting the situation, making it seem like the regulators are at fault, or even worse, pretending this has to do with security." In Apple's new world, the fees could be astronomical. Picture this: a popular free app with tens or hundreds of millions of EU users now faces a tax on every download and update annually. Imagine this impact on popular apps like WhatsApp, Duolingo, or even X. Without the presence of many major apps, alternative app stores will lack appeal, rendering the EU's efforts to foster digital market competition futile. Spotify itself faces an untenable situation. With our EU Apple install base in the 100 million range, this new tax on downloads and updates could skyrocket our customer acquisition costs, potentially increasing them tenfold. Under the new terms, we cannot afford these fees if we want to be a profitable company, so our only option is to stick with the status quo, the very thing we've been fighting against for 5 years. Despite these concerns, Apple's move signifies a major step towards compliance with the DMA, a law aimed at curbing the power of digital gatekeepers like Apple. European regulators will be closely scrutinizing the company's proposals and have the power to demand further changes if they deem them insufficient. The battle lines have well and truly been drawn then. On one side, regulators are demanding that Apple open up its tightly controlled App Store, and a new law coming in March 2024 promises to force the issue. On the other side, however, Apple stands ready to obey, but with a sidestep so subtle, it might leave everyone wondering, is this real compliance, or is this just an elaborate charade? The European Digital Markets Act aims to break Apple's monopoly on iPhone app distribution by allowing sideloading, which means installing apps outside the official App Store. But according to Apple's critics and competitors like Meta and Spotify, Apple's proposed compliance plan reeks of a classic corporate maneuver: give the illusion of change whilst maintaining the status quo. Apple reportedly plans to review each sideloaded app, essentially subjecting sideloaded apps to the same scrutiny as App Store apps, effectively negating the point of bypassing the gatekeeper. They also plan to collect fees from sideloaded app developers, adding another layer of financial disincentive to sideloading. Critics argue that Apple's approach nullifies the very purpose of sideloading, which fosters competition and developer freedom. With the same rules and fees, why would anyone bother with the extra hassle of sideloading? The convenience and security features of Apple's App Store might still hold sway for most users. The company, unsurprisingly, declined to comment, sticking to its familiar tune of protecting users from harmful apps. But the cynics point out the other side of the story. The App Store is a lucrative cash cow for Apple, generating over $85 billion in revenue last year. Losing control means risking not just user security, but also that golden stream of income. Apple's strategy isn't unique either. We saw it recently in the US, where the company similarly tried to minimize the impact of a court ruling, allowing alternative in-app purchase options. This legal and technical game of cat and mouse with regulators, while costly and generating negative press, seems to be Apple's way of protecting its App Store empire for as long as possible. The question remains, will European regulators fall for Apple's sideloading shuffle? Will they demand true open access, or accept this seemingly token gesture of compliance? The answer will shape the future of app distribution in Europe, and potentially set a precedent for other regions too. The stage is set for a fascinating showdown, with the stakes higher than ever for developers, users, and Apple itself. Ultimately, the success of Apple's App Store reforms in Europe will depend on their effectiveness in promoting genuine competition and empowering developers and users. While concerns remain about the new fee structure and its potential drawbacks, the opening up of the ecosystem represents a positive step towards a more diverse and user-centric app landscape. The coming months will reveal whether Apple's changes truly live up to the spirit of the DMA and deliver a new era of app freedom in Europe.